Hello, and welcome to Realms Beyond, Ashes of the Fallen. Today, we're going to take a look at abilities and skills when creating a character. So, I looked at these briefly during the character creation video, so I just want to briefly remind you what they all do. So, you have 6 different ability scores. You have Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Now, one thing you'll notice as these scores go up, every 2 points gives you a +1 modifier. +2, +3, and +4. And yes, you can get to 18 this way, of course. But this is how the game tracks how these abilities assist and are derived into other factors of gameplay, such as your hit points, your saving throws, how many special abilities you can use per day, and so forth and so on. All of those are factored in here. However, each stat also does something basic that every character takes advantage of. So Strength is something that is useful when you're trying to hit opponents with melee attacks. It increases both your attack roll and your damage roll, both your accuracy and your damage by the number of points here. So in this case, +3 to each. It also determines your carrying capacity on your individual character, as well as various skills, such as athletics. And yes, they all have various skill things. Dexterity does multiple things. It increases your reflex saving throws by the modifier. It also increases the attack roll, but not the damage roll of your ranged attacks. If you want to increase the damage roll of ranged attacks, you need certain weapons, and it's your strength that applies, not your dexterity, so you have to keep that in mind. It also impacts your initiative check, which is the roll determined for the turn order of battle. And it also determines your armor class, which is an addition on top of whatever armor you're wearing, insofar as it's not limited by the armor. Constitution does 2 main things. It increases your fortitude saving throws, and it also increases your hit points per level. This makes it very nice. It's one of the best stats in the game because of its multiplicative factors. Because you get the bonus every level, you get to enjoy it exponentially, effectively. So it just gets better and better the higher it is. In fact, when you increase Constitution over the levels, which can happen, it has a massive impact once the modifier changes. So if you have 11, and then at some point you suddenly get 12, suddenly you're getting retroactive benefits from your increased Constitution. Intelligence is very similar, except it works with skill points. You get a certain number of skill points every level based on your intelligence. So if you're a fighter, you get 2 normally, but then you can add your int modifier and increase it. Obviously, they've changed the precise mechanics of how that works, but in general, the more intelligence you have, the more skill points you get every level. This is also multiplicative. So this is just as good in that respect as Constitution is. But it doesn't really help you in any other way unless you're a wizard or another intelligence-based class, because there doesn't seem to be a language system in this game. So normally you would get more languages too, but it doesn't seem to be featured here, so I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. Wisdom is good for certain classes, but in and of itself is not particularly relevant, because unlike Dexterity and Constitution, all it has is Will Save. And that's pretty much it, unless you have a class that uses it. Of course, all of Of course, Constitution doesn't have skill benefits, so I suppose because Wisdom does, then it benefits there. But then how about Dexterity, which has a saving throw, a skill benefit, and many other things? So Wisdom is not treated very highly unless it's a very important stat to your class. But, of course, it might be a lot better with the sanity rules, so that might be one way that they're improving its viability. Charisma. Your charisma generally increases mostly skills and class-based abilities. Some might argue that it is much weaker than wisdom because it doesn't even help your saving throws. But charisma can help you in a lot of other ways. Most of the skills related to charisma are quite crucial, in fact, and many of them can be used in combat even, such as bluffing and feinting, and other factors related to that. So it is, perhaps it's tied with wisdom in terms of how weak it is compared to the first four stats and how useful those can be. But it really just depends on what you're playing. That is really all that matters. That matters about it, that is. So, now that we've covered, let's just sort of do that. And then just sort of move along. I'll use the rogue to sort of do this explanation. So this is the current list of skills. We don't know if this is all of them. And just as a reminder, all of my videos and all the details I've discussed are not a guarantee. Remember that this is definitely still in beta, things are up to change, and it's not like we know that not even all the origins are in yet, not all the biographical descents are in. So many of my assessments could be wrong. Who knows? But I'll do my best to try to provide as much detail as I can manage. So we have descriptions now. As you can see, athletics is used for physical tasks. So in 3.5 there was an acrobatics and an athletics. That's probably, and I'm sorry, there was, those skills and jump, climb. They were separated out, so it's been condensed down into athletics. Perception, that used to be search, spot, and listen, condensed down. So basically, this is the most important skill in the game, usually. Because you want to be able to see everything that you're dealing with. Perception is very important, which I suppose makes wisdom very crucial, but again, most people still dump it, and they just pour their points in just to make it better. Survival. This is what you want if you want to live more off the land and travel light, because otherwise you'll have to carry stuff with you. Then you have a limited load. But also, you can fail at survival, and then you'll die, so you do have to balance out your load and what this skill can provide for you. Also, rangers use it for tracking purposes. You'll want it for a ranger. Thievery. This is, of course, the arts of larceny. Locks, traps, pockets, so forth. Picking pockets, and so forth. Maybe even legerdemain, if that's included. But the idea is that this is the rogue's most useful skill. Mostly because other classes can't find traps with this skill above certain difficulty levels. So it will be really hard for you to deal with certain kinds of traps without it. So you'll need it for that reason. Stealth. This is the other part of the thief. It's, you want to remain unheard and unseen. this is the one that you use. It can be useful for your entire party to be stealthy if you want to have synergy within your party. This can be very useful in certain approaches to combat and so forth. Also, camouflaging your camp can be very useful. Diplomacy. The art of convincing others. Along with bluff and intimidate, these are 3 charisma skills you probably will not want to do without. Diplomacy is fairly self-explanatory. It's just convincing others. Bluff is more of a elaborate disguise, covers, deception, that sort of thing. Intimidate, using the threat of violence, the threat of force, the arsenal of violence can be quite intimidating against those not ready for it. All based on charisma. Generally, you'll want all 3 of them covered, because it is likely that they will all be useful in different circumstances. But it's a lot of skill points to keep them all up to date. So some players might just choose one and just deal with the others. That can be done as well. Generally, bluff and intimidate have been useful in combat in D&D 3.5, so they might actually have like a special action in the game, but it's not implemented in there as far as I know, so we don't know everything about that yet. Lore. This covers the knowledge skills of 3.5 altogether. So you have an easier time with various things. It probably includes the appraise skill. It's a lot of skills condensed down into one. Identifying items, magical scrolls, things of that nature. Understanding the world around you. This can be useful when it comes to knowledge, and knowledge is power. Enough to make a difference, in fact. Knowing is half the battle, as they say. So there's that. Healing. Now there are spells and magic, and that's usually how you probably want to heal. But also bandages. And a heal skill can be still very useful in a world without lots of healing potions, as far as we know. So you may want to take this. Now I mentioned in a previous video that it might be useful for sanity too, but they might have changed that. It doesn't sound like it's here. But it might still be useful anyway, so I would take it anyway. Alchemy. This is a crafting skill. It takes over the crafting segments of the skill system. Mostly for potions and grenades with various effects. It can be very useful. That's usually grenades are very useful for your characters that are just not really good with weapons, and they can just throw a grenade. The halflings will probably be pretty good with alchemy because they have a bonus on their throwing weapons, which might apply in this case. So alchemy, pretty useful, especially because of its mixing of natural and magical. Now cooking. The craft skill of cooking doesn't do much in the world of D&D 3.5, the system reference document, but it mentions here that it's useful for, well, improving the morale of your party members, which may relate to sanity in some manner, or it could give you minor benefits that last a little bit of time while you're full. And of course there's always the hero feast spells and things like that, so it's not like you can't do that sort of thing with just cooking. There's magic that can do that if they add it in. But it can be really useful to be able to cook food, because as we have noticed, there is rotten, diseased food in the game. Eating that stuff could be bad. cooking it might make it actually consumable. So cooking can be quite useful on the road. And finally, music. Again, this is a morale-boosting skill similar to cooking, although in this case, it doesn't require you to find ingredients, merely having an instrument or singing well. Also, music can be used in a variety of fashions, from distractions to imitation. So, seems pretty useful, especially if you want to have a bard in your group. We don't know if bards will be even better able to use this skill, but if they do implement them, this will probably be useful. Now there are many skills that are not included in the list which are in 3.5. To name a few, decipher script, gather information, things of that nature. Profession. Although in the case of profession, it's probably your biography that really matters there. So profession would be a useless skill anyway, because you already have one. But it's not all here. Gather information isn't really needed, because you can just you can actually gather information. And you don't need to appraise, because the game gives you information based on your lore skills, so that's where that is. And things like, the decipher script, that one I don't know what they'll do, but I imagine that if they add languages, there might be something to it. There's many other skills that I'm probably forgetting. Those are the ones I recall. But anyway, so that's all the skills. And of course, as you can see, the stats make a difference. It should also be noted that the cost increases every 2 ranks, or if you divide your ranks by half. Now for the class-based, or for the reduced cost class-based ones, it's every 3 ranks. So for this one, it's every 2. For the ones that don't have green, every 2 ranks the cost increases by 1. But if it's the green ones, the cost increases by 1 every 3 ranks. So it's much easier to get it higher. So something to consider when you're trying to create your characters. Alright, so there we are. Skills and abilities. Hopefully you found that informative. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.